Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome. I'm so happy to be here with you. Welcome to Grounding into Your Radiance on Transformation Talk Radio. I'm your host, Stacie Barber. And in our time together, I would just love to create a space where we can feel free to dream, explore, and really reconnect with our authentic, essential selves. And I'd like to let you know a little bit of ways that you can get in touch with me as we go on. If you're interested in reaching out, my email is stacie.barber@gmail.com. You can find me on Instagram at Stacie Barber Coaching, and my website is staciebarber.com. And it's Stacie spelled with an IE. And I just wanted to let you guys know that I'm really so honored to be here with you today and to begin this journey together, to be able to start to look at all the facets of our lives and what makes us who we are. And I think the biggest question that would probably be coming up for you, and you might be wondering, what does it mean to connect to your essential self? What is your essential self? And the best way that I can describe that for myself and what I've seen in other people is that we know that we have been there and connected with that essential, authentic component of our lives when we feel ourselves being pulled away from it, or we feel ourselves in that space of wondering where that aspect of our lives went. And knowing, when we can come back to that knowing that we are in our bodies, that we are all that we need, we have everything that we need inside of us, that's reconnecting to your essential self. And that's a huge part of what brings me here to you today, because I know I can relate with that story. And I'm wondering if someone else out there might too, of being in those facets of life where we have those blockages come in and we have things that, knock us off course, and being able to really magnetize, come back to reconnect with who we are at such an innate level is such a gift. And that is the power of what I'm hoping to bring to you in this time that we have together today and moving forward, as some of the ways that I have found that have worked for me in my life, through my clients' lives, and those that I love, to be able to course correct, to be able to come back home to who we know that we're meant to be, that state of being that we're all innately born with, and really finding that peace in that moment. So, just a little bit about me. I am a conscious mindset mentor and authentic lifestyle coach for women, women who are ready, ready to step in to their innate power and their worth, on a mission to create more joy and freedom in their lives. And I love watching this process. It brings me more joy than anything I've ever experienced in my life. Walking side by side with women who have that nudge, who have that feeling, who have that calling to do something bigger than themselves, to grow and expand, and to remind them that they're worthy, and to help them see what the rest of us see in them. And so I'm hoping that as we have this time today, you walk away feeling a little bit more empowered, like you've learned something really powerful and new, and most importantly, knowing that you matter, knowing that your voice matters, knowing that who you are matters, and knowing that it is exactly what you're supposed to bring to the table. So every other week, we'll come here together and just be able to talk about some of the most relevant and inspiring topics and tools that I've been experiencing, that I'm learning, that I've been able to see in the world around me. And it's really to help you step into and live the life that you fully deserve, so that you can reconnect with your essential self. And so today, I really felt that it was important to start with my story, because what I know about each person's individual story is that it is an ability to shine the light on ourselves, to be vulnerable, to be able to have the eye of self forgiveness and compassion. And as I shine my light on my story, as you shine the light on your story, it allows so many other people around the world to feel that same ability, that same permission that their story also matters. And as I was contemplating on what it was that I wanted to bring today about my personal journey, I really started to see this vision of my life being sculpted, really sculpted from the inside out. If you think about a potter and his clay sculpting this masterpiece, right? That you start with this mound of clay that you're not exactly sure where it's going to go, what you're going to create, how it's going to look at the end, but knowing that there's beauty in that clay, there's beauty in the possibility. And for me, I really feel as if life has been that sculptor, how it's come in and it's sort of worn off the rough edges or the parts of me that really needed to grow or shift to become who I am today, to be able to sit here, share my story openly, with truth and vulnerability, and to be able to sit in the space of knowing that the truth of my story will also help someone else out there that needs to hear the words that are coming through me today. And as I sat here preparing, the vision that comes to me is really that ability to be a conduit of openness, of love, of light that comes from something much bigger than each of us. And so that's my hope for us today, our time here. And as we think about that, as we think about the potter and we think about the clay and how that we're each crafted so uniquely and individually, I'm just curious as how to like what that means for you. If you can each just stop and think about, how has your life been sculpted, like how does this apply to you and your personal experience. And what I've learned about our story is that our story can be such a huge component of our life. It can be the catalyst that prepares us for all the endeavors of our experience that we have no idea that are coming our way. And but as we can look at our story from a viewpoint of, what can I learn here, what is coming to me that's going to help me step into that next version of me, rather than identifying and defining ourselves and feeling almost like we're stuck in the story that has created our life. How can we begin to step back a bit? I always like to say, how about we zoom out a little bit and think about, if we can look at the trajectory of our life, each component, there was a lesson in that, and bringing those lessons in, implementing them, integrating them into our experience, and letting them begin to cultivate that next level of ourselves, right? And so I'm just curious how that sits with you guys, how that's feeling, what's coming up for you. And I just want you to know that this is a safe space. And this is a space where I want you to begin to explore those things. I want you to begin to allow your mind to soften around what it is that you have created as your life experience and what that looks like moving forward. And I also think about the process, the vision of the rocks in a riverbed. And if you can think about the rocks that fall off the cliff, right? They're jagged and dirty and they fall down into the riverbank. And as time, as life, as experience starts to butt those rocks up against one another, how that naturally and organically starts to soften the edges, right? Soften the edges of those stones, and how it might feel uncomfortable and a little scary. We've all been there, but how that starts to create the beauty that is seen before us, that we can create, that we can allow. And the word that really resonates so deeply with me in this process is the aspect of surrender, of surrendering our experience to what's to come. Yes, like taking ownership of our choices, being in the driver's seat of our life, and then also being in that space of being okay in the not knowing. And that phrase has really allowed me to step into different aspects of my life and to be able to find the components of my life that I didn't see. I couldn't see what was coming, but I knew that if I surrendered to something that was much bigger than me, something that was grander than me, something that I could allow that release, then the journey would feel so easeful. And so I just want to leave you with these ideas. And the first question before we go on to break, I just want to invite you to consider how life has been the ultimate sculptor in your experience. And upon reflecting that, how you can sit in a space of immense gratitude for that experience, for that process. And where have your rough edges been polished? And how is life continuing to sculpt your experience from the inside out today? And as you're listening, I just want you to think about these moments. I want you to just sit with yourself and just allow yourself to be and really be in that space of surrender. So you're listening to Grounding into Your Radiance. I'm Stacie Barber. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to explore a little bit more about my personal journey and how life has really miraculously sculpted me from the inside out, and how that has allowed me to sit in this space today to be with you and to share my story with you, which is such an honor. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. I'll see you in just a bit. Hi there, welcome back. We're here, Grounding into Your Radiance. I'm your host, Stacie Barber, and I'm here today just having the opportunity and the honor to share my personal journey with you and how life has been the ultimate sculptor that has really allowed me to ground into my radiance. And something that's been really helpful for me thinking about that, the grounding into your radiance. I live in Charleston, South Carolina. And if you've ever been here, it's a beautiful space in the world. And there are the most majestic oak trees all around us. And you can see oak trees with limbs that go on, it seems like forever. And when I came into the space of the knowing that in order for the limbs to radiate or grow out into these abundant lengths, there had to be the same substance beneath. The root system had to go beneath just as much, if not more, as the limbs lengthening out and radiating in all these different directions. And so as below is above and as above is below. And to think of that really grounding in, connecting with the root system, going deep, going in to really find the stability to then be able to radiate so beautifully is such a beautiful metaphor that I hold so close to my heart when I think about this. And this phrase was brought to me and it just felt so meaningful and deep that I thought that little story would be helpful to kind of wrap your head around why it is that it's so important for us to really ground in to be able to radiate out. So again, I'm Stacie Barber. I would love for you to connect with me any way that feels organic and lovely for you. I'm on social media at Stacie Barber Coaching. My website is staciebarber.com and my personal email is stacie.barber@gmail.com. And before we went on break, I was just having everyone think about where it is that rough edges have been polished in your life and how life is continuing to sculpt your personal experience today and in your past and looking towards the future, what that looks like and how we can really start to, despite the pain or discomfort that growth and expansion causes, how we can be in a space of gratitude, knowing that it's preparing us for the next level of ourselves. And so in that light, I want to tell you a little bit more about me and where I'm from and how I came here to you guys today. So as I mentioned, I live in Charleston, South Carolina, but I'm originally from a small town in North Carolina. It's Boone, North Carolina. So up in the mountains. Again, if you haven't been there, beautiful place to visit. And I like to think that the people that I was surrounded by growing up is what you would consider salt of the earth, like mountain folks, right? Like good, wholesome, loving people. And that was really the surrounding for me that helped me feel grounded in my space. And in my personal home, there was definitely, despite all the love that surrounded me, there was definitely some conflict. I grew up with a father who was an alcoholic and a mother who was loving beyond belief. And anyone that's experienced life with or around someone that is struggling with the disease of alcoholism, you can understand that there were so many moments of conflict, of misunderstanding, of fear, because you never knew if you were going to get the person beneath the disease or the disease itself. And I remember so many days not being sure of which dad I was going to get. And when he was around, a lot of times he was working and he was, trying to provide for the family, which he did so beautifully. But when he was with us, it was those, as a little girl, not being able to fully trust in the experience that was coming towards you, not being sure of who it was that you were going to see, um, really felt quite confusing to me. And I remember my mom, God bless my mom. She tried so hard to overcompensate, to love us despite what was going on, to the lengths of no end, really, of just taking my sister and I under her wing and just letting us know that we were okay, that we were safe. And I'm so grateful for that. But there was also, a lot of, it was a tumultuous relationship between my mother and my father. And as a young child, I could really see how emotionally this was starting to tear my family apart. And I remember at the age of about 7, which is the age of my oldest daughter now, I looked at my mom and I begged her to leave. And I said, I'm not sure how we continue to go forward like this. I'm not sure how we can stay safe and how we can be okay in this space. It was really in that home. It was my first experience of what I consider emotional abuse, a lot of disrespect between not only my parents, but then my father to everyone in the house. And at times it felt really too hard to bear. And I am so, in awe of how that experience has helped me moving forward, has created a resilience inside of me to be able to stand inside of my knowing, that trust that even as a 7-year-old little girl, I could feel that something was wrong. And I really lean on that intuition of knowing when things are going really well in life and when things are off track. And I in that family, I also think about, with a huge smile on my face, the male in my life that really took on the fatherly role, and it was my grandfather. This is my mom's father, and he was a Baptist preacher. So if you can imagine having this amazing relationship with this man who I consider was my person, and my father who was struggling with alcoholism and deceit and all the things that come along with such a over encompassing disease, that I felt like I was in this shaker of not really sure which way was right, not really sure who I went to for the right answers. And I began to really question everything. And it started really young. I began to question, well, what is it that's right or wrong? And how can I have this experience with this person? And then on the other hand, with this other person, and it all feel part of my family. How can I, like, where do I go? What are the choices that I make for myself in this? And it really, for me, it felt quite blurry. And in that, as I continue to grow older, I felt this deep sense of beginning to question everything. And I started to question my own choices. I was beginning to question like my body and what that meant and what it felt like. I began to question what I believed and who I wanted to spend my time with. And um, nothing began to make sense. It all felt really blurry. And I remember around the age of 14, my mom had finally gotten to the space where she knew that it was time to leave. The best way I can describe it, even though it was so confusing and there was a tumultuous relationship, it was my only sense of stability. It was the rug in which my life had been placed on. And it was as if that rug simply got pulled out. And so already being in that space of confusion and questioning, in my teenage years, I really stepped into a space of rebellion because I didn't know where to look. I didn't really know deep in my heart what felt right or what felt wrong. And as I can look on this now, I really started to begin to lose that sense of my authentic essential self. I started handing it away. I started handing it to the boyfriend that I was dating, or the friends that I was hanging out with, or the alcohol, or the drugs, right? It was anything that I could begin to project myself out to so that I didn't have to sit in this deep space of pain, deep pain. And those choices begin to lead to consequences. And at the age of 17, I remember going into a grocery store and buying a pregnancy test. And I went to the bathroom and I remember looking down at those lines and losing, just completely losing it and bawling my eyes out, knowing that I had gone even deeper into this space of losing myself. And I went home and I told my mom that I was pregnant and I was dating someone that was not right for me. And we had a deep conversation. We went through all of the options, and together we collectively decided that it was the best choice to have an abortion. And going back to the original story of growing up in this town that was salt of the earth, really the Baptist Bible Belt of the Carolinas, going through that process, making that decision was one of the hardest of my life. And as we drove to the abortion clinic, I just remember feeling such a deep inner conflict of not knowing which way to go and almost feeling as if I was stuck. And I can go back to that and I can feel the feeling in my belly and I can feel what that feels like in my whole system. And I went through with the process. And when I came to, it was as if a blanket of shame had been dropped down upon me. It was as if I had lost every sense of knowing, of value, of worth that I had going into this experience. And again, it was that feeling of being so confused, being so torn. And as I got home, as I start to sit with myself and really allow myself to feel all the feelings of what was going on, I hit rock bottom. And I I remember being in that space of, I don't know if I can get up out of the bed today. I don't know if I feel worthy enough to be able to step out of this space that I've gotten myself into. I don't know if I can look at my friends in the eye. I don't know if I can even look at my mother in the eye and talk about this. And there was just this deep need to go within. And I was in that space for quite some time. And for me, it felt like the lowest of lows in my life. And the fear of acknowledging my truth, and then also the need to feel the need to cover it up. It it sent me to a space of deep depression hibernation. And so in that, I want you guys to sit with this for a moment and I want you to just feel that with me. And I want you to think about in your life, what does rock bottom mean? And is it true that when we hit rock bottom, when we come to the bottom of our life, when we hit that space, is the only way that we can go is up? And I want to share the rest of that story with you when we come back. And I want you to really start to think about that in your life and think about what rock bottom might feel like. And if you've been there, if you know someone that's been there, and feeling the feels in that space and really considering, What is the next step up? So I can't wait to be back with you in just a moment. You're listening to Grounding in Your Radiance. When we're going to come back, we're going to deeply explore how I finally began to rise from the bottom and coming up. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hi there. Welcome back. Welcome back to Grounding into Your Radiance. I'm Stacie Barber. Welcome. And I'm here with you talking about my personal journey today and really about how life has been my ultimate sculptor. And before we went on break, I was just contemplating with you guys, thinking, about that phrase, when you hit rock bottom, the only way is up, and what that means to you personally, or what that means to someone in your life, and how you can really relate with that. Because I think the power in sharing our personal stories is that ability to relate, to see ourselves in someone else's story, and allow them to see themselves in ours. And I always go back to the Maya Angelou quote of, we are more alike friends than we are unalike. And isn't that true? And hasn't the current space of life that we're living in right now proven that to us, in that space of being all together, that we are all experiencing life in completely unique and different ways, but we're all deeply intertwined and connected as well. And so I'm honored to be continuing to share this story with you. And if you want to get in touch with me, I want to share that contact info with you one more time. My website is staciebarber.com. I'm at Gmail at stacie.barber@gmail.com. And then my website is on Instagram, I'm Stacie Barber Coaching. I would love to hear from you, and love to hear what you guys would be interested in hearing from me. And so reach out, let me know. I would love to hear your story and to be able to connect with you in that way. So when we left, I was talking about how I really found that space of being in my lowest of lows, being in that space of completely overtaken with shame, discomfort, confusion. 17, finding yourself pregnant with a boy that, was not good for me, that I knew was not my person for the rest of my life, and making the really difficult decision to terminate that pregnancy, and all the emotions that come along with that. And what I've noticed is, when I have begun to share my story transparently, even the difficult parts that have been hard to express at times, I always am met with someone that says, thank you. Thank you for shining your light on what happened to you, because that allows me to not feel alone. That allows me to be able to forgive myself. That allows me to be able to get out from that dimness and shine my light. It allows me to just be able to sit with myself. So that's my hope with this today. And that's my hope of bringing this to you today. And, when we're in that space, when we get to that space of not knowing which way is up, not knowing which way to go, what is it? Like, what comes to us to be able to make the choice, to make a choice to either stay where we're at, stay in the experience of what's going on in our lives, or to make a choice, to make a different choice, to make a better choice or a right choice for us. And I feel there's so much in that. There's so much around the power of choice, so much that we're going to talk about that on our next show, and how when we can take 100% responsibility for ourselves, no matter what has been going on in our lives, to say, you know what, today I'm going to make a better choice for myself. Today, this is the way that I'm moving. And that's what happened for me. I was in this space of deep depression, managing any way I thought I could, ending up, controlling everything around my life, including my eating patterns and the people that I was around, and getting into that knowing of, this is not what I want for my life. This is not what I choose for myself. And how can I begin to make that next choice? And so I did. And I just decided in that moment, I'm not alone in this. And I know that there's something better for me. I know that there's a beautiful life awaiting me. And all I need to do today is make one right choice, to make one step in that direction. And then I'm on my way. And it felt rocky. It felt like a baby learning how to walk again. It felt like I knew I was going to fall down. I knew I was going to bump up against the sofa, right? Like we're going through that space. But knowing that even if the road to recovery is slow and sometimes uncomfortable, I'm still moving towards what I know to be true for me. And something that was such a huge moment in my life that really helped me get to that space is the clarity of knowing that the more I hide and the more I run away from my story and what's happened to me, the further I'm going to get away from my essential self, the further I'm going to get away from that healing component. And so I started taking steps forward slowly but surely. And what came to me is the knowing that I have to be open about this. That if I hold my story and my pain and my shame longer and deeper and I keep it there, it's almost as if a splinter was stuck in my skin. And as it sits there, it gets painful and it gets infected. And we know it's there, right? We can see it. But until we have the courage to be able to remove that, to be able to let the air and the light in, to be able to let it heal, we can't move to the next step. And so that's what I started doing. And I started slowly sharing my story. I started being open. And it began to give me that momentum of hope and that feeling of, I do matter. This matters. This all happened for a reason. And I don't know what that looks like. I didn't know in that moment what that looked like for me yet. But I knew deep in my soul that this was going to be something that was going to be a part of my life and part of my story forever. And I'll never forget the true testament of forgiveness for me was when I came to the knowing that I had to share my story with my grandfather. This man, right? He was the head of the house. He was the loving but also firm teddy bear for all of us, for the children, for the grandchildren. He was just the most amazing man. And he was full of faith. He loved Jesus and he knew where he stood. He was in that grounding. And as I began to heal, I knew that the next big step for me was to share my story with him. And I remember telling my mother that this was what I wanted to do. And because she was also in that space of holding on to the shame of the story, she could not even acknowledge that this was something that needed to happen. We had a deep discussion, and I finally looked at her eye to eye and I said, this is what I have to do for me. This is what the next step looks like for me. And he always used to sit in this big window, this big, beautiful box window with his rocking chair. And he would have his Bible or his, cup of water or whatever by him. And I remember walking up and just sitting down in front of him and saying, I need to talk to you about something. And as I began to share what was going on and how I knew that I needed to bring light into that and truth into that and speak those words to begin to heal, tears started rolling down my face. And I look up and he's also crying. And in that moment, he looked at me and he said, I'm so proud of you. And I am so happy that you felt comfortable to bring this to me. And I love you so much. I don't love you any less. And what you need to know is that you are forgiven as long as you forgive yourself. And it was this permission. It was like a permission slip from this amazing man that said, you don't need my permission. I love you no matter what. You matter. This matters. But you also need to step into that space and allow yourself to forgive yourself. And I remember that feeling washing over me of knowing that I had that power within me, that everything I needed was right here in my heart, in my body. And I began to do the work. I began to go deep. I began to speak about that out loud in public to people, my friends and loved ones. I began to continue to heal what felt like a broken soul. And I remember one of the first times I stood in a church full of people to share my story, and to share the story of forgiveness, and to share the story of knowing that it's a gift that we can give ourselves at any moment, and that our past never determines our future. It's a stepping stone and it will always be part of us, but we always have a choice. And by sharing this, I began to feel such an immense sense of healing that I never really thought possible. And it began to enter my life in so many different facets. And I knew that my life was starting to change. It was an uptick. And the most joy and happiness that I could have ever imagined started entering into my life. And I could start to see the purpose in the pain. And I could start to see why it was that I was meant to go through this walk in that way. And it prepared me for the work that I'm doing today. And I want to tell you so much more about that when we come back. And I just want you to sit in that knowing of that, really knowing that everything that we need is inside of each of us right now. It's not out there. It's all here. And when we can start to bring the light on that, knowing that that's where true healing and true growth and true acceptance really comes in. And even though that might seem scary or daunting to share, what are the parts of you that you might not have fully accepted yet? And are there areas where self-forgiveness is calling you in, like it was calling me? And what happens if you heed that calling? Right? So I'm so excited to come back with you in just a minute. We will be back and we will step into where I am today and how my story has really begun to sculpt the path that I'm on. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Grounding into Your Radiance. I'm your host, Stacie Barber. And when we just went out on break, I was just having you guys consider the question around areas in your life or components of your life that might be calling you in to really fully accept and forgive yourself, or bring in, really unite all of those components of yourself, and knowing that that's the true testament of healing, really uniting all the parts of us and letting that really begin to deeply cultivate the person that I know that you're meant to be. And as we continue the story, my story, being in that space when we left, of being in that area of allowing that healing to come in, and anyone that's been there, and I know that we've all experienced this in some component or some facet of our life, when we start to allow that in, how we start to get so much clarity, right? The veil starts to lift, and spirit and guide really start to bring us down the path of what it is that our life is meant to bring to the world. And for me, this was so true. Once I began to allow my story to be a component of the trajectory of what was coming, and not something that held me back or held me down, all of these amazing insights and gifts and opportunities came to me. And I started to invest in myself. I started to remind myself that I'm worthy. I started to spend the time on really healing my soul and investing in what it was that I knew that I truly deserved in this life. And through that process, I began to really grow in so many ways, spiritually, emotionally, physically, allowing myself, bringing all of those facets of myself in as well. And I met the man of my dreams, my husband, and we've created a beautiful family. And as things felt like they were moving smoothly, I felt like I was on my way. I had gotten my degree in occupational therapy here at the Medical University in Charleston. I got a call one day, right? And this is what I'm learning about life is that we never know what's coming in, and just to stay open to those nudges. And so I get the call that my dad had actually been diagnosed with cirrhosis of the liver, and that his alcoholism had finally caught up with him, and that the family needed to come, that he would not have much longer to live, and that I had to sit in the knowing that the only two people that were really left to care for my father were my sister and I. And growing up in the home that felt really difficult with this individual, how can we show up and really be who we need to be in this moment? And I remember walking into my childhood home, and I come up the stairs and I look up and I look over into the living room, and I see a hospital bed sitting in my living room, my childhood living room, and my dad's laying there, a shell of himself. You know, he'd lost half of his body weight, and he was still able to communicate just a bit. And what I knew to do is I came in and I did the things that I'd been trained to do through my degree. I transferred my dad. I shifted him in and out of the bed. I was able to give him medication. I was able to just show up in a way that for me was such a difficult, yes, but also such an honor to be with anyone in that space in life. And the evening that my dad took his last breath, this download, it was almost as if this little letter came floating down from the heavens that said, yes, your life has prepared you for this moment. You knew how to be here. You knew how to care for this man. But now it's time. It's time to move forward. It's time to step out on faith. It's time to stop this job and step into the calling that you've really had in your heart's desire your whole life. And I remember being in that space of almost arguing of, what do you mean? I've got my insurance and all these things, right? My children go to school through or daycare through the hospital. You know, what's my husband going to say? And it was just this knowing, that landing, that download of, yes, all of those things, but it's time. And so I decided that there was only one way, and it was to listen. And I go back to the quote that has led me through so many components of my life, that when we come to the edge of all we've known, one of two things can happen. We can either step out and find ground to stand up on, or we can learn how to fly. And so in that moment, I knew that no matter what happened, being okay in the not knowing, that my next step was a step into the unknown. And yes, there was fear. And yes, there was that sense of floating, but also knowing that I was so deeply taken care of. And it has led me to really stepping into the work that has allowed my story and my message to be the platform and to be the deep core of my work of working with women who find themselves in the spaces that I had found myself, being at the bottom, being in that space of second guessing our intuition, being in that space of not knowing what's next, being in that space of feeling unworthy and feeling as if they don't deserve the goodness that's coming into their lives. And I'm here to step beside them the whole way and help their awareness just begin to open, to begin to allow that deep knowing that they have innate worth, that they have power beyond belief that they bestow deeply inside of them, to know that they can ground down, to be able to radiate out, to connect back with themselves, to be able to step into their greatness, because we all deserve that. And my heart is in that so deeply. And I've created programs and coaching that really allows us to step into that journey together, that allows the women that are ready to feel, that are at rock bottom or at that space of not knowing what's next, feeling the fear creep in, of being able to say, yes, and yes, I can feel this. Yes, I know where I'm at. Yes, I've been here. And I have a choice. And I know that each choice, each step gets me closer and closer to the life that I know that I deserve and that I know that I want for myself. And so I hope this has been a meaningful time together. This is my story, the story that brought me here. And I really hope it touched your heart in a way that inspires you to look at your story as your message, not only as your message, but as your gift, and that it's something that only you can own. And I want to leave that with you today and also remind you that you already have all that you need right inside of you. The answers are there and they're waiting for you. They're just waiting for the invitation to come through. If you can just give yourself the deep gift of listening, trust that you'll be held and that you will be led in the directions that are that are greater than your wildest dreams that you can't even imagine. And I just want to invite you to keep dreaming, keep believing, keep trusting, and keep remembering that each and every thing that you need is held deep inside of you. As you ground into your radiance, allow that truth to come to light. Thank you so much for tuning in with me. I'll be here every other week, and I'll be here Thursdays, second and fourth Thursdays of the month. And I just would love for you to join me 12 o'clock Eastern. And this time today has meant as much to you as it has to me. I would love to hear from you. Reach out to me any way you feel led. My email is stacie.barber@gmail.com. My website, staciebarber.com. And I'm on Instagram at Stacie Barber Coaching. Next week, we'll be diving into the power of choice, and such a deep, meaningful topic for me and how it can change your life. So I hope you have a great week, and remember that you hold everything you need within. Lots of love.